A new Star Wars journey begins in the place all good journeys begin. At, well, the beginning. This Star Wars Day, I'm excited to introduce the new Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast, where we will piece together the complete story of that galaxy far, far away in timeline order, from the dawn of the Jedi through the great unknown following the sequel trilogy. This is a podcast for both Star Wars superfans and complete newbies. Listen to the short intro episode now to hear how it works and what to expect over the coming weeks as we set the stage for the new television series The Acolyte, which we will be covering with weekly breakdowns. Subscribe to the Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast wherever you listen to take part in one of the most epic and expansive stories ever told, following all the twists and turns from start to finish. May the 4th be with you all month and beyond.
Hello and welcome to the Radioactive Ramblings podcast. On today's episode, we are going to be covering the Amazon Prime video show Invincible. I'm one of your co-hosts, Aaron.
And I am one of your other co-hosts, Chase. And today we're going to be covering episodes 5 through 8 of Season 2 of Invincible, otherwise known as the rest of Season 2.
Yeah, I'm your other co-host, Richard. But since Invincible's been out for a while, we're just going to do a 2-episode review of Season 2. This is the second of the 2, and there will be no spoiler-free section at all because it has been out for a hot minute. And if you have not watched the second season of Invincible, this is your time to tune out if you do care about spoilers, because we're going to head right into it.
Now, Richard, you're a new voice on this podcast. You weren't with us in the first half.
I was not. However, I am one of the. I'm Aaron's. I'm your other co-host on the Fallout Lore series, and we just finished recording our first episode yesterday, and that was fantastic. I'm happy to be here, though.
Yeah, we're happy to have you.
Thank you.
Happy's a little strong, but
all right, buddy.
You're here.
Wild.
You're here now.
I am here, and you can't.
Another
stop
voice to fill the void.
Another voice in my head.
Yeah, I got a lot of those. I don't know what's up with that. It's crazy.
All right. Let's get into episode 5. So episode 5 opens up with Mark basically disemboweled, bleeding out on the ground after his fight with the Viltrumites. We see the ruins of Thraxa, and we see him he hobbles back to the capital area of Thraxa with the help of some other Thraxans. He feels like, once again, we see Mark putting the weight of the world on his shoulders. He feels like it's his fault that this has happened to Thraxans. He talks to the queen, his brother's mother, Nolan's second wife, about how he thinks what happened to Thraxa is all of his and his father's fault. It's not his fault, but it's definitely his father's fault. But yeah, he kind of feels that pain once again. It's similar to Chicago, where even though it's not his fault, basically 100% his father's fault again, he still thinks for some reason that the blame lies with him. But then we see Thraxa is being rebuilt now with the help of Mark. He stayed longer on Thraxa to help them reconstruct their nation after all of the damages. We see Nualzot, the guy who was dressed as Seance Dog. He's an old man now. We see Oliver, Nolan's younger brother. We see his mom is also old now. And then for a quick second, we cut to Earth, where the Guardians are facing off against a villain called Omnipotus, but we don't really see much of that when we cut back. And basically, Nolan's second wife, I forget her name every time, but
Andressa.
Andressa, yeah. she basically begs Mark to take Oliver with him back to Earth because she knows that if she stays on Thraxa, he will outlive everyone he was raised with, everyone he loves, and she knows that's a solitary and sad life, and she kind of understands the longer length of other races' lives now, knowing Nolan and raising Oliver.
Yeah, it's very sad that she has to ask this of Mark because, like she says in the episode, you have this situation where this kid is going to grow up and not even all the people he knew now, but generations and generations of Thraxans are going to come and go, and he's still going to be a kid.
No, yeah, like as he's a toddler, everyone that's taken care of him will be dead by the time he's like a normal like child, and then by the time he's a teenager, all of those people will be dead, and then by the time he's an adult, all of those people. It's like crazy.
Yeah, and I feel like he really won't have like familial bonds. Like, yeah, sure, he'll have a friend, but I think they said they live for about a year. So like,
Yeah. We kind of just in the comics you kind of see a little exploration of that a little bit. But yeah. All right. And then we see Mark head back to Earth and he kind of surprises his mom when she gets back to their house and she's like, "I missed you, but it's been 2 months." We learn that Mark has been gone for 2 whole months. And I mean, just knowing that, that's kind of crazy. Like, think about he just started college. He's missed 2 straight months of college off the rip. Um, his girlfriend, like, he hasn't seen her in 2 months. He hasn't spoken to her in 2 months. His mom, of course, I mean, we know she's been having a rough time. Hasn't seen her. Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah, we say this a lot on our little Invincible reviews, but I feel bad for Debbie. Her son was just gone for 2 months. Ah,
yeah,
good God.
she really is like the strong. I feel, and I think Aaron, you said this last episode. Like, she is the most emotionally, at least, resilient character that we've seen in the show so far. Like, she really goes through it.
Yeah, to not break down when your son is missing for 2 months. I'm sure that Cecil gave some sort of idea to Debbie, like, oh, he's off planet. Don't worry about it. He's okay. But still, your kid is millions of miles away on an alien planet. You have no idea why or what the situation is. It's gotta be so stressful.
Yeah, and then he immediately like springs the Oliver news on her, and she's like, "Oh my fucking god, I have to take care of Nolan's other kid."
Yeah, I do feel like she has a pretty good. I mean, given everything else that's happened with Nolan, especially the whole pet line at the end of the first season, like, she really does a good job with like taking the news. I feel like 'cause she's still. I mean, she's a little reluctant. I feel like, but she does pretty much immediately jump to taking care of Oliver.
Yeah, I mean, we see later when she's taking care of him later on in the season, like even though she has no blood ties to Oliver, she has no duty to Oliver even. She doesn't owe Oliver anything. I mean, yeah, he's a kid. He's innocent and everything. He doesn't deserve to be abandoned, but she doesn't have to take care of him. She does a good job of taking care of him. She she takes care of him like he's her own. So I think we really see Debbie as like just we see her as the real reason that Mark is good here. And I think that that kind of goes into some of the Angstrom Levy stuff we'll talk about.
And not to get ahead of the outline too much, because I believe this is in a later episode, but with Oliver and Debbie, you even see the argument between Debbie and Cecil where they're trying to figure out who's going to take care of the kid. And she brings up that point of, I'm the one who raised Mark to be strong enough to defy his father. I've got this, like,
Yeah, and not only that, but she kind of knows Cecil is not the straight and narrow guy everyone thinks he is. She knows that he has some ulterior motives. He's probably going to try and turn Oliver into a weapon. Um and she knows that she has to protect him. So yeah. But yeah, okay. The next scene from this episode is where Donald confronts Cecil about his cyborg membership. The fact that he is not 100% man anymore. So Cecil kind of tells him like he's died like I think like hundreds of thousands, maybe. I think it's like hundreds, like of times in the field, and every time he's like had his memory erased, and that now he's like, I think like less. He's like less than like 20% like person anymore.
It's insane. The fact that he's just pulling up to Cecil with his arm cut open and you can see the blood, like I guess fake blood it would be, right? Out of his
Well, I think
skin
it's like
and
real
arm.
blood and flesh. Like obviously, it's like probably lab grown, but I think it's like real blood and flesh. Like it's like the Terminator shit, where it's like, yeah.
Got it. So he's got the fusion of flesh and machine going on. It's not just fake skin, which is, I kind of thought it was like fake skin, fake blood they had pumping through his body, but that makes a little bit more sense because that technology seems like it would exist in the Invincible universe.
Yeah, definitely in that the funny fluorine room or whatever chemical it was.
Yeah, okay. And our next scene, Mark he's finally back at college. He learns that he's on academic probation. He has to speak to the dean from his roommate. His roommate's like, "Yeah, I tried to cover for you, but you're gone for 2 months. Like, what do you want me to do about that?" And then as Mark is heading to see Amber, Cecil like teleports right in front of him, and basically they have like a standoffish argument. Mark tells Cecil that he's not gonna let him take Oliver. Cecil's like, I already have my guys on their way. You're not gonna be able to stop them. Um, but Mark's like, fine, I'll check in and work for you tomorrow. So don't take Oliver. And then Mark was, I think he said, Cecil was like, we needed you and you were like you left and we needed you, and Mark was like, what do you mean you had the Guardians, like everything should be fine, like you guys can handle me not being there. And he was like, the Guardians almost got wiped out by Omnipotus, and then it cuts to like a scene of Omnipotus like beating the brakes off the Guardians, and a little scene where Shapesmith gets knocked on his ass, and quickly he turns back into his Martian form, but goes back, and I think Black Samson sees him.
Yeah, um, he's not doing a very good job at hiding the whole Martian thing. He both seems really suspicious, and I know that his teammates are looking at him like, what's your deal, man? Like, why are you acting so weird? And then also that little slip up, it definitely gives him away a little bit too much.
Yeah. And then we cut back to Mark, who heads over and sees Amber, but she's really happy to see him, but she also already has some friends over, and you could see that the friends are like, they're not too happy with Mark. They're like, "Oh, so your boyfriend is real." And like they're like, this guy's kind of an asshole because he never sees his girlfriend. Um but yeah, we kind of see their relationship deteriorating a little bit. And our next scene goes to Donald again, where he's basically like he's in the lab where they're like manufacturing the cyborg like skeleton bodies, and he has like a PTSD moment as like getting choked out by one of the cyborg skeletons or something. I couldn't tell if that was like real or not.
I think it was just a
Like
flashback
imagine,
or like,
yeah.
yeah, I don't think that was real.
Yeah, just like some PTSD brought stuff.
All right, and then we cut to the Guardians where Rudy is trying to help Amanda train. Oh wait, no. I think this is.
I think
Yeah,
this
this
is when
is.
he wants to like
Yeah.
fix it, right?
Yeah. This is where Amanda is training with Duplicate. She's blindfolded, and then Rudy's like tells Immortal like, "Hey, like Amanda's powers, like you shouldn't use them so lightly because they quite literally reverse her age every single time she uses them." And then Amanda starts like tweaking out. She's like, "I don't need you. You're not my keeper." Basically, like we went on one date and you're this controlling, like what? And like I was like, I understand like her being like, you don't need to like, you're not my dad, like calm down. But like at the same time, like I think everyone can tell he has the best intentions in mind, and he just he's trying to help her out. Like I like he has a valid point there. Like, and then we see that there's Donald finds that there's a Mars ship headed towards Earth, and Cecil brings it to the Guardians, and they're kind of analyzing what's going on, and they find out that Shapesmith, or no, they don't find out. They all know that Shapesmith is a Black Samson. Yeah, yeah. Um, and so they like find out, and he basically exposes that he like sabotaged the astronaut to go to Earth.
Yeah. Because they're like, where's the real, I don't remember the guy's name, but where's the real whatever his name is? And he's like, he I left him on Mars.
He was like, "Oh, my people
Oopsie.
were right behind us," but we see in the flashback that he morphed his arm into like a baseball bat and hit him in the head and broke his helmet.
It's too good. Oh, poor guy
Yeah.
got scooped up by the Sequids, but it's so funny that Shapesmith tries to play that off like it's not his fault. He's like, "Oh no,
Yeah.
they would have gotten him. It's all good. Don't worry. He's
Yeah,
fine."
totally. Whatever.
It's a very
love him.
very odd morals right there, Shapesmith.
Yeah, he's an interesting little fella.
Bro could have morphed onto like hit the back of the astronaut onto like a little like piece of wiring or something and pretended like
He could have been like the patch on his shoulder, because I remember like
yeah.
that was how we knew that it was the Martian, because they showed in the first season like the patch changing to the actual flag.
It's a cool little detail. I didn't remember that until you just brought that back up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had rewatched like the whole series before the second batch came out, because there was just such a long hiatus.
And then in our next scene, we see Rex and Eve. Rex comes to Eve's window. She lets him in, and they talk. We kind of see a little character development from Rex here. I feel like we see he's not the greatest guy, but he's doing his best to cheer up Eve because she's still down after what happened in the previous episodes with the, no, I wouldn't say misuse of her powers, but I guess
More of a mishap with her
mis-
powers.
without foresight, maybe. But yeah. And then we see Cecil calls Mark in to help with the Sequids, and the Guardians, including Mark and Eve, split up with Mark and Eve and all of the Guardians that basically have flight and super strength and Shapesmith go to space to confront the Martians, and the rest, being Rex, Shrink Ray, and Duplicate, go to fight off the Lizard League. Oh yeah, Rudy also goes to space to fight off the Martians.
He originally wasn't going to, but he made the case to Cecil that they needed him there for his technological prowess. I think it was because he wanted to protect Monster Girl, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah.
Well, his technological prowess does end up saving them. So yeah, we see the Guardians intercept a ship with a absolute fuckload of Sequids. Yeah, just absolutely crazy. And at the top, leading the charge, is the poor astronaut man under the Sequid control.
And he's got them like all over his body. It just
Yeah. They look
Nasty.
freaky as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we cut back to the other group of Guardians where They intercept the Lizard League and basically all get their asses handed to them, except Rex kind of clutches up and eliminates them all, except for, I think, is it like King Lizard?
King Lizard,
King?
I
Yeah,
think.
King Lizard.
Yeah.
At the end, we see a scene where he puts a gun to the back of Rex's head and it cuts away to Alan the alien with his life support off, but he wakes up bigger and stronger than ever. And Thetis tells him why he turned his life support off, because either Alan would die or become strong enough to truly be a threat against the Viltrumites. And Thetis also reveals that he is in fact a Viltrumite and the first ever to rebel against the Viltrumite Empire.
You think that Thetis actually knew that, or is he just making shit up so that Alan doesn't get
Well, no,
pissed he pulled the life support?
No, he definitely knew it, because in the comics and in the show, when we like go back, Thetis and the Coalition helped the Unopans basically create Alan. Remember when the Unopans, like the remnants, escaped from the Viltrumites and they did all the experiments? They helped them create Alan. So like he definitely knew of Alan's powers. And I don't know, it's not really detailed that well in the show, but in the comics it's like Alan's powers is basically like he's like he gets like strength from like getting like beat up in a fight. So like every time he gets his ass
Oh.
handed to him, he comes back stronger.
Dude, it's literally just Dragon Ball, I swear. With that shit.
It's
you know?
that's quite literally what it is. I was gonna compare it to that, but I don't think Aaron knew.
I have not seen Dragon Ball, so I wouldn't have got the reference.
I think
but
it's called like a Zenkai boost.
I remember that because that was in the Risk of Rain 2 mod. The Goku mod.
I'm not versed in all this.
This guy. Unbelievable. Calls himself a lore master.
Calls himself a lore master and he doesn't know Jack Daniels.
Oh no,
You're
I'm
right,
sure.
I
I'm
don't
sure
know
Aaron
Jack.
knows Jack Daniels. All right.
Yeah, I'm sure too.
I've been to Bev
actually.
City.
More like Bev Metropolis.
True.
Okay, now.
All right, episode 6.
All right. So in episode 6, we pick up where we left off with the Lizard League and Rex, where we see the head of the Lizard League holding the gun to Rex's head. Some threats are exchanged back and forth, and eventually Rex tells, well, it's King Lizard, right? Is the head of the, yeah.
Some cheesy shit, man. They're goofy.
Exactly. So he tells King Lizard, just pull the trigger, and that's exactly what King Lizard does. Rex gets a shot to the skull, and this shot to the skull kickstarts his character development too, which we're going to get into.
It really does, dude.
I guess losing part of his brain made him a better person. Maybe he lost the misogynistic part of his skull when King Lizard shot him in the brain.
That is an interesting theory. I'm going to go try that out real quick and see what happens.
So, yeah. After being shot in the head, Rex pulls off some crazy moves. He basically goes into full instinct mode, and while his brains are coming out of his skull, goes, defeats the Lizard League, and then a bunch of agents from the government sort of rush in and are like, "Sir, are you okay?" And Rex insists that he's fine as he collapses with a missing appendage and bullet through the head. So that was definitely a lot. Yeah, I know I'm jumping around the outline. I'm sorry, but
Thank you, Chase.
I feel like we can jump around a little bit here because those two scenes go pretty congruently with each other.
Yeah.
All
No,
right.
I loved like the whole everything with Rex in like these 2 episodes. I remember I was texting you, Aaron, like, oh my god, what the fuck? Like, why?
Yeah, exactly.
Because it seemed like he was gonna turn a new leaf, and then I thought he was dead, and that was that I don't know. Glad he's not.
For those of you listening, as I was going through that first part, Chase wrote a note saying me when Aaron skips around in the outline. So I tend to either skip things entirely or skip around when Chase writes these nice little outlines for us. I put all of his hard work to shame.
Better not do that
Like
with the Elden Ring
always.
one too, buddy. Or we're gonna have to do that on the Fallout lore.
All right. The scene after Rex gets 360 no scoped in the forehead, is
That's wild.
the Guardian. We see the Guardians in space are able, or they're fighting the Sequids. At one point, Eve gets got by the Sequids, and I was like, and I didn't remember this happening when I read the comics. I completely forgot. But for a second, I was like, holy crap, wait. Eve's powers are kind of crazy. What if they use them to absolutely destroy the Guardians right here? But they didn't have time to get him off. I think Rudy used like an EMP like device to stop them from controlling her. And they are able to defeat the Sequids through the use of Rudy basically putting himself in very much harm's way, turning his suit, basically like the core of his suit, into a giant EMP bomb to deactivate all the Sequids in the area. And when he finishes making that, he's like, I need someone fast to deliver this to the host of the Sequids. And Immortal and Mark both rush to it, and Mark's like, Immortal, stop being stubborn and give it to me. So, because I'm faster and stronger than you. And Immortal's like reluctantly almost doesn't give it to Mark. And he does end up giving it to Mark, and Mark is able to splash that wet like water straight into the net, nothing but net. um he they get it done, and they have to flee the Martians because for some reason the Martians are like super hostile towards humans. I mean, I can understand now that they basically got the Martians enslaved by the Sequids, but they were enslaving the Sequids. Like, is it all black and white here? Are the Sequids truly evil? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. When Shapesmith was talking about how, since the Sequids can't pierce the skin of the Martians, they just use them as their servants. So,
Yeah, like
like,
that's evil.
yeah, I
Like,
was like, that's not great. Why are we doing that? Just let him be. Just let him be.
yeah.
While we're here, Chase, I had a question for you since you've read the comics. I don't really understand how the Sequids got to this point where they're like ordering the Martians around and having the Martians pilot the ship for them. If they can't penetrate the Martian skin and take control over their minds, I don't get why.
Okay, so basically, you know how we saw how there's like a tsunami of them now that they have a host? When they don't have a host, they don't have a hive mind. Yeah, so when they
Oh.
have a host, they have a hive mind. That's why, like, remember when Shapesmith was like, trying to protect Rudy, but they were like piling together to like drill through him and like get under his like stuff. Like, yeah, that's why. So like, normally, like, if they don't have a host, like, they're just like, I don't know, like, animalistic, I would say. Like, I mean, obviously smarter than animals if they can be servants, but like, they're not smart enough to all come together and overpower the Martians.
Got it. Okay, that makes more sense. Okay. And it makes sense why they don't do anything once they don't have a host. Okay. All right. So as we move on, we are. Hold on one second.
Well, what we do when the Guardians are fleeing, we do see a quick, just another moment where Rudy and Amanda kind of have another argument. Rudy being, I would say, a little bit controlling again, but then again, we all know he has like zero social skills because this is like The first time he's ever like truly interacted with people in real life.
Yeah, he's had his stolen DNA body for like less than a year now.
Yeah, literally.
Bro's not very good at being human.
Who is, honestly? But yeah, so next up we have Cecil pulls up to Debbie and Mark's house, and he offers to help raise Oliver in a totally great environment for a child, because we know Cecil obviously just has that mothering instinct in him. And Debbie kind of turns him down and just says, like, she knows that Cecil's up to something, because he always is, and she thinks that or not Mark, Oliver needs to grow up with, well, one with Mark, so that he has a sibling that also has powers that could help him through, like, understanding how to use them, train him, all that, but also so that Oliver can, like, socialize and have people skills and not just be a super weapon for Cecil, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I'm imagining that if you've seen The Boys, um, I'm sort of imagining the environment that Cecil would raise Oliver in as sort of like the environment that they raised Homelander in, like growing up in a lab. Yeah. So it's a good thing that Debbie fought to have sort of custody, I guess, over Oliver instead of leaving Cecil to raise Oliver, because that just would have been awful. Supervillain in the making if Cecil took that kid.
He didn't really off. He didn't like. He wasn't like, we'll take him away. He was like, we have like a care, like a daycare facility for, which like I didn't think he was like being too weird here, because like, I mean, like he was talking about how like they have other superheroes that work with them who leave their kids there. So I feel like he was like trying to be like genuine here, but I do also think that if they left Oliver in the clutches of Cecil, he would turn out to be more of a super weapon than anything else.
Mortal is mourning Duplicate, and he seems to feel differently about the loss of Duplicate than he has about losing people in the past. He doesn't express this yet, but you can tell he's really shaken up. For someone that's been alive for thousands of years, he's definitely been through loss. He's definitely loved people that, as he's grown older, or not, I guess as he hasn't grown older and they have, he's lost them, and this one just hit him a lot harder. Maybe because it felt like he finally found someone that understood him. Either way, it's a little bit strange that they were together to me still. I've said this in our first podcast on Invincible that I wasn't a fan of their relationship, but
Yeah, I think she's in her like early 20s, but that's not much better.
No, not at all. I mean, he's been alive for thousands of years, so relative to him, she is a child. Like,
Well,
not great.
relative to him, anyone's a child, but yeah, yeah,
True.
she is quite literally almost an actual child.
I do not like that too much. So we get a little bit of Mark and Amber content. They are, oh my god, bless their hearts. They're really trying to make this relationship work out. Um, this whole season, I don't know. Did either of you feel like at any point that they could work things out and really make their relationship happen?
No.
I,
As soon
I
as
don't think that they could, honestly.
as
Yeah.
soon as he got back from the 2 month, I knew it was over. But I mean, I read the comics, so yeah. But their relationship in the comics is honestly, I would say, significantly different than in the show. I think in this show they have a much better and relationship and a more understanding of each other. In the comics, it's like Amber's just like not a good girlfriend.
I will say I had a little small bit of hope when, like, he came back, but then as soon as they went on, like, the date to the coffee shop or whatever, and it was just the most awkward, like, almost
Yeah,
cringy scene to watch. Like, I it was
that's
over.
this
It
one
had to
right
be
here.
over.
Yeah, that's this scene right here. No, we were
Yeah,
talking
I
about
thought
it.
it was
So yeah.
no, I thought it was the last episode. That's my bad though. But yeah,
No, last
like
episode
this
they didn't get to
scene.
go on a date.
Oh wait, yeah, because they're like talking or whatever, and then or no, he's gonna go talk to her, but then Cecil cock blocks him.
Yeah, but then they like talk in her bedroom for like a little bit, and that's it. But yeah, I think we really see the
Downfall of their relationship.
rapid decay of their relationship right here. And I mean, I'm not trying to invalidate Amber's feelings because it's fair for her to feel this way, you know, like even though what Mark is doing is so much more important than their relationship, and however sad that may be, and however cold that may be, but I mean, I think he is kind of right, not completely in assuming all of the responsibility he does throughout the show, but he is right. He's very gifted, you know, and he as someone with those gifts, it is kind of his duty to go out and do good with them, you know, and they Mark and Amber talk about this later, but it's like every second he spends with Amber, that's a second he's spending like not saving someone.
Yeah, I do remember they get a lot more into it. I think it was episode 7 of the season.
It's like episode 6 and 7, but
Yeah,
mostly episode 7. Yeah, we kind of near the end of episode 7 they really get into it. But yeah, our next scene we see Mark going to visit Rex. He kind of has a heart to heart with Rex. We see they kind of bond a little bit. They get a little broy. We see Rex is he's recovering. If that's what you can call it. We get and Mark runs into Eve when he's leaving after visiting Rex. I think, or maybe he runs into Eve as she's leaving. I don't know. I actually no.
she stays after he leaves.
Exactly. But she kind of talks to Mark a little bit. We get a little background on Rex. He has like a very sad backstory. Yeah. And then we see a little scene where Eve and Rex are just looking at. I think it's like furniture furnishing like magazines because Rex never really grew up in a proper home, so he enjoys like looking at like that stuff because it lets him think about living in a proper home, which is like really sad.
I really liked like I didn't like this scene because like it's awful. It's terrible for him like that his character had to go through that
But yeah, it
obviously. But
humanizes him.
yeah, it humanizes him and it starts to like plant those seeds of like character development. Like we're getting to know him better. We're understanding that he's not just like
He's not just the cocky asshole.
I don't know. He obviously didn't grow up in like a normal situation and like I think it humanizes him a lot more because there are people who grow up in a picture perfect white picket fences, all that crap, and like they're terrible people. I mean, I just feel like it's really good for his character, and we really do get more into that later on.
We move on to Debbie interviewing some candidates for babysitters. We see her interviewing this older woman who seems to be very qualified, and then she accuses the woman of being one of Cecil's spies, and then as soon as she accuses this woman of being a spy and sends her away and brings in the next interviewee, the next person immediately comes up to the door and admits to being sent by Cecil. So she might have misjudged that first babysitter a little bit, but made for a pretty funny scene.
Yeah, and she kind of just like they have a small conversation, and not Mark, shit, I gotta stop doing that. It's the hair. Oliver, there we go. Oliver is like playing with something that he I don't know if it's something that he shouldn't be or whatever, but like she is gentle and like hands him a toy or something, and then when he takes the toy and she takes the I don't know keys or whatever away from him, and like while she's doing this, they're talking about like, oh yeah, so I was sent by Cecil, but you're my boss, not Cecil. Like I'm not gonna do something without your say so, and all that, and presents herself as more of a, I mean, a more motherly figure, which is someone that you'd want taking care of a kid. At least I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think we see that she's a caretaker before she's a government operative.
Yeah, which is fantastic. Even though she was sent by Cecil, she does tell Debbie, no matter what, I'm working for you. I'm not working for Cecil. You and your son are what is important. Oliver's what's important. Cecil is secondary. It's unethical for me to act in any other way, which is I'm surprised that Cecil even sent her because I'm sure that he has like background information on what her morals would be. But it's great that she's like this and is willing to do that. Then we cut to Cecil arriving at Eve's treehouse, and once again, Cecil makes the offer for Eve to join the Guardians. Even though she doesn't accept, she does tell him if he ever needs anyone to help save the world, she will, of course, always be there. She's not going to give up doing this whole superhero thing, but she just can't be a part of the Guardians.
Yeah. Then we get Mark asks Art for relationship advice. Art's the guy who makes all the costumes, voiced by Mark Hamill. Love him. And then at the same time, we get Amber and Eve are talking about their relationship, and we get this kind of like the parallel scene where Mark's talking, and then whatever he's about to finish his sentence with is where Amber's picks up, and I don't know, it's pretty much the same conversation. It's just I mean, obviously parallels, but it's Mark and Art and Amber and Eve pretty much saying the same thing, and I think they both Art and Eve both tell Mark and Amber, like, why aren't you got free time right now? What the hell are you doing talking to me? Go see Mark, go see Amber,
Yeah, sorry. Not to get off topic a little bit, but okay, I just searched it up to make sure because I remember being confused when they went to Adam Eve's treehouse. In the comics, I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be in like Africa. Like,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
somewhere.
yeah.
That's
Um,
so random.
yeah, because in the comics, I think she was like having like a whole arc where she was like helping like rebuild stuff in Africa. Like
I'm glad that they decided to drop the white savior arc in favor of helping rebuild Chicago instead, because that would be that would be an interesting way for them to go with that.
well, it's cuz like in the comics she had like that whole arc where she was like trying to get away from like the whole superhero stuff. But yeah, I remember being like how the hell did Amber walk here?
Yeah.
Amber walked to Africa.
Oh,
No,
she
I was
just
like,
she just hit her boy Cecil up and was like, "Hey, teleport me real quick," and he just did it.
our
Because why
boy
not?
Cecil. I don't think she's
Yeah,
spoken to him once.
I would hope not. I love
Um,
Cecil though; he's great. He's such a silly little guy.
but yeah, we cut to William and Rick. Rick being William's boyfriend, the guy from season 1 of Invincible who got turned into a Reaniman. Um, but yeah, he's back to himself, or so we think. But yeah, he's like in bed tweaking out because he's like, I don't remember anything. I'm not myself. Or he's not in bed, but he's on a walk with William, and he's like, I don't. How am I me if I don't remember anything about myself? Yeah, and we get a little scene where Mark's reading a little bit about a little into his dad's books. Um
Yeah, and we get the guy with like the really long gun barrel. I don't remember what it's called. I think like the Infinity Blaster or Ray or something. Um, and a lot of them are like they're able to, the Infinity Ray is able to kill anything it hits, and it just goes through space forever. There's a planet of like I guess monsters you'd call them. I mean, they're aliens, but they're super strong because the gravity is so high on this planet. And I think that's when Mark kind of realizes that his dad's last words to him before he got taken off
no, no, he
weren't
doesn't
just a.
he doesn't realize. He doesn't realize. Yeah,
So Alan comes in this scene and attempts to recruit Mark to join in the fight against the Viltrum Empire. He wants to bring him back to meet Thetis. But Mark is like, hey, listen, I can't just leave my life behind. Things are rough with my girlfriend right now. I finally feel like I'm in a place where maybe I can start to fix that. I need to fix my grades, all this other stuff, plus the fact that Earth needs him to do the whole superhero thing. But he does tell Alan about these books, and Alan determines that these are all ways to hurt a Viltrumite. So Alan scans the books, and Mark tells him before he leaves to go back to Thetis that once the time comes to really fight the Viltrum Empire, Mark will be there, but until then, he just can't be a part of the fight yet. But as soon as they figure out when and where this is going to happen, when the real war starts, he will be there to help. Before the episode ends, we cut back to the astronaut who is um, trying to get his home back in order after Shapesmith absolutely wrecked it, left rotting food all over the place. Yeah. All these old, like, takeout containers that just smell awful, and yeah, poor astronaut. Um, yeah, whatever your name is, astronaut. And before we cut to black and move on to the next episode, this man goes over to his sink and goes to vomit, which presumably we thought was going to be from the fact that he had all of this rotting takeout food around him. But then we see him barf out a sequid, and now there is the threat of the sequids having their host back, and there is a sequid on Earth. Very ominous.
I think it attaches to him at like the last, like it literally attaches to him, and that's the screen going black. And yeah, that's totally not gonna be important later in the show. Definitely not.
Well, I can tell you one thing, it's not going to be important in the rest of this season, but it'll come back later.
Yep, don't see brother for the rest of the season.
All right, let's move on to episode 7. And we find Amber and Mark still trying to make things work out together. They're at Comic-Con together, and they see a bunch of people dressed in Invincible costumes, and Mark gets very embarrassed by this. He's like, oh my god, is that actually what I look like? And Amber sort of makes fun of him a little bit, and they go on and go through Comic-Con on their little date. Crazy choice for a date when you haven't seen each other in a long time at Comic-Con.
Yeah, it does get pretty meta here too, because they he talks to his like favorite comic artist, who's the guy who draws Seance Dog, and I remember they were like, oh yeah, it takes forever to animate stuff, and I don't remember the whole thing because it was a good like 5 minutes, and it was a lot of words, and they just like went over different styles and examples of why it takes so long to animate stuff and how to like cut corners a little bit here and there. And I think that's about it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
rewatching that kind of pissed me off because motherfuckers took absolutely forever to release the second half of that season, acting like they didn't already have it done. And then they
Yeah.
tagged ads onto it. So when I went
You were
back
a
to
trooper.
rewatch, when I went back, dude, every time I go back to rewatch, there's more ads, dude. When I went back to rewatch for this outline, there was 3 ad breaks per episode, and each of them had 4 ads.
Oh yeah, that's what happened to me because I only just got on the Gen V grind and just finished it actually last week. Great show, but yeah, a lot of ads. Very unfortunate.
Yeah, Amazon Prime Video definitely,
The
they're full of
greed
ads
has
now.
glazed over their eyes.
Yeah, we're literally in Fallout, guys. When are the bombs dropping?
So at the end of their little Comic-Con excursion, or I guess in the middle of their Comic-Con excursion, Eve calls Mark and tells him that Rex has gone missing from the hospital and he needs to go help track him down and see what he's up to since Eve is otherwise indisposed with another villain. So Mark reluctantly tells Amber that, I'm sorry, Rex is missing, like I gotta go. And she, of course, is understanding. If not, I'm sure she's annoyed by the whole situation, but she handles everything very well. She handles all of the being ditched stuff very well in throughout their relationship. So yeah, Mark goes and helps Rex to take down a villain called Octoboss, and throughout the course of this, Rex is kind of struggling, but at the end, he convinces Mark to let him take down Octoboss. He says, "Come on, man! Like I really need a win here. I need something to prove to me that I can be a superhero again."
And then he whips out his new arm laser cannon.
Yeah, that's crazy, but awesome. I'm sure he's going to utilize it later, and it's going to be cool as hell. But I think that's all we see of it this season.
Yeah, he was even like, "Oh my god, I should have led with that thing."
Cool as hell, though. I love arm cannons. I don't know why. They're just so silly.
I know. In Cyberpunk, they're fun to play with. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
they're. So then we go to Rudy and Amanda doing some training, and I believe this is where Rudy has her inside of a sort of device that'll let her control a robot monster girl from like remotely so that she doesn't have to transform every time, or at the very least doesn't have to transform while she's training. And in the process of this fight, she destroys one of the drones, and Rudy makes a comment about, do you know how expensive those things are? You can't be destroying those. Um, yeah. And this is the scene that Richard was talking about earlier, where Bulletproof and Black Samson are talking up above while watching Rudy and Monster Girl training. And they're talking about how the Guardians are just not a whole lot right now. They're not the best superhero team on Earth, and Samson tries to convince him that their strength comes from the fact that they're a family. Their bond with one another is what really makes them the best superhero team. Not the fact that they are the strongest, but the fact that they have that bond and can accomplish anything together, which is very, very touching.
Yeah, but Bulletproof is kind of hating on the new Guardians for a minute there.
I mean,
I
He's
kind
got
of
mean,
some valid
rightfully
points.
so.
oh no, he's got
though.
valid points. Like the thing about Rudy or Robot, whatever you want to call him, like cloning himself into younger Rex so that he can date Monster Girl, like that one's completely fair. That's just a very strange dynamic.
And so then we move on to the next scene where we see Cecil and the Immortal having a meeting, and the Immortal decides that after everything that happened with Duplicate, he just can't continue on as the leader of the Guardians. He needs some time off. He doesn't feel like himself. This one really hit him hard. He feels like he can't do the job anymore, and maybe some time off really would be best for him. Although Cecil doesn't take that news very well. He's like, "Dude, what the fuck are you talking about? You can't quit." But at the end of the day, it's not up to him. So after Cecil leaves the meeting, he offers Rudy the job once again of being the leader of the Guardians.
And I think here Immortal does make some good points though. He's like, I'm unstable right now. Like I almost cost us the fight with the Sequids by not trusting Mark. And I almost fucking started a war with the coalition by trying to beat up Alan. Like I mean Alan would have kicked his ass, but
Yeah, Alan's crazy now.
At least he has that sort of awareness where
reflection. Yeah.
yeah.
He's able to look back and not be and be like, yeah, I was kind of a fucking idiot. Like
I think that scene specifically too is supposed to give us more of like a, oh my god, like he actually has been around and working on himself for however many years he's been alive. Because like there are, I mean, we've all lived it. There are a lot of people that don't have self awareness, and I definitely think that That obviously comes
Yeah,
with
like
time.
you.
Yeah, real. Honestly, I don't know. The TikTok brain rot just sucked all the self awareness out of me. All right,
Fair enough.
Okay.
I blame Aaron for what he sends me.
I don't send you anything brain rotted, Jason. I don't know what you're talking
That's a
about.
lie.
Yeah, it's not adjacent. It just is brain rot.
If I open one more Goonatar reel or TikTok, I'm gonna lose it.
He's getting exposed.
So we cut to Rick, and he's still not feeling himself. But more interestingly, in this set of scenes, we have Donald demanding to know what's gone on, and he ends up getting to watch all of his past deaths, and he sees that over and over and over again, he has suffered a fate worse than death, which is being brought back and having his mind
And being
erased.
brutally killed again.
Yeah. I mean, in some of the clips we saw, he just got like straight up exploded by something. I mean, that first one with Omni Man too could not have been great. I mean, he like ripped out his spine almost. Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, when they said that he still had 30% human flesh left, I was like, are you sure he has that much left? Like, that seems like kind of a high number. So Donald watches all of his deaths, and he is obviously disturbed. I believe this is the scene where we find out that it was Donald who requested.
So you see, if we look at the outline, that's actually not this scene.
Yeah, I'm with Chase on this one. We got one scene between. However, I mean, they do fit well together, so I mean, I would assume the first thing he does after watching all the deaths is storm over to Cecil to say, "Hey, what the hell, bro?" So like, I feel like we could skip down there, and then we'll return to the other scene after.
This guy never reads the damn outline.
Words don't have meaning, bro. Okay, I don't know what you're
Oh
talking
my
about.
goodness.
That's crazy.
they never taught me how to read. They taught me how to weld the metal. That's it.
After Cecil gets to watch all of his deaths, we cut to Mark meeting with the dean. Thank you, Chase. And we find out that the dean is the old principal from his high school. Interesting choice there to make the principal the new dean. And he tells, thank you for highlighting it again. He tells
Yeah, he tells Mark that he's gotta get his grades up and all good and stuff, or he's
I think he gives him
donezo.
like a month.
I think
he's like-
yeah, month
He's
or
like,
till the
if
rest
you,
of the
if
semester.
you can prove to me in like a month, I'll let you stay.
yeah, he was
Which
also
is
like,
not very long to get your grades from an F to like a pass, but okay.
no, and he was also like, hey, I get it, your dad died, but also you need to choose if you want to be in school or not. Like, it was kind of a harsh way to put it, being like, yeah, I know you're going through a rough patch, but too fucking bad. Like, get it together.
Especially if he was the principal at Mark's school, so he knows that Mark was like a good student too. Like
He like has to know that there's actually shit going on. Like I don't know, that scene was just wild. I figured when I first saw the principal in the dean's office, I assumed it was just like one of Cecil's people, but
That's what I thought too. I thought he was going to be like, I've been a secret agent for Cecil the whole time.
well, yeah. I mean, that to me makes sense because like, why would a random high school principal become a dean of a university? What do I know? Are you just gonna highlight everything from now on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Then we move on to a little scene of April being shown to be a very good nanny for the family.
you're doing it on purpose now.
We went over the reason. Oh wait, no, we didn't actually. Well, we did because we said that Cecil or Donald told Cecil to
The
wipe his
wheels are
memory.
falling off.
The wheels on the bus go side to side, side to side.
Side to side. Yeah. Okay, so as Chase is telling us to get to, before we talk about April being a good babysitter, Donald finds out that Cecil and him like had talked things out, back probably like 20 deaths ago, who knows. And Cecil's like, "Well, you told me to block out the memories." And I'm checking through the outline, Chase, don't kill me. I think that Donald in this scene says like, I want to keep remembering because that's important, like in making me who I am, or something along those lines.
No, I think he asked Cecil to wipe his memory again. I'm pretty sure.
Yes, he
He
does.
does? Oh, what the
He
fuck?
asks Cecil to
Yeah.
wipe his memory. We'll get to the part where he
Well,
changes his mind in a few
yeah,
scenes.
Okay,
Yeah.
exactly.
my bad.
Then we get a little scene of April being a very good nanny, taking great care of little Nolan Jr., little Oliver, and
Nolan Jr.
there's not a whole lot else to say about this scene. It was pretty straightforward. Then we see Mark talking to his mother about his issues with Amber, and she can tell right away once he walks in the door that something is wrong. And, she has that mother son moment where he breaks down a little bit and decides to tell her about his problems, which definitely was nice to see that moment of tenderness and openness between the two. I feel like there's been a bit of a wall between them since the whole situation where he left for 2 months, and they're finally starting to get back to some sort of normal mother son relationship at this point.
And the next scene has us seeing, Mark and Amber. They go to shit. Sorry, Chase. We see
That
Donald.
wasn't even me. That wasn't
Oh,
even me
Aaron.
that
Okay,
highlighted.
sorry. You're green. My bad. We see Donald and Rick up on the roof at college, and Rick is about to, as Chase put it, skydive off the roof. Um,
Gotta
and
keep it
so
PC.
fair. So Donald stops Rick from skydiving because he talks to him, kind of levels with him and says like, he doesn't outright say like, "Oh yeah, I'm very similar. I have a lot of severe PTSD too, and I'm also a cyborg." Like he doesn't say any of that, but he kind of describes what he thinks Rick is feeling, and it's kind of a bonding moment between them, and it stops Rick from skydiving, so that's great.
Yeah, it's this moment of clarity for both of them that they both realize that their lives are worth living. For Rick, it's just realizing that his life is worth living at all. And for Donald, it's realizing that he needs to be living his actual life and not just erasing his memories. Like he's missing pieces of himself that he doesn't want to be missing anymore. He just wants to be a whole person, even if that means carrying those awful memories, which is something I can I feel like sympathetic towards. I think that the idea of just wanting to be your whole self, even though it's hurting him a little bit, like I, it's definitely a relatable moment for anyone who's been through something rough, of wanting to forget, but at the same time not wanting to lose that memory.
Well, yeah, because your mistakes and your choices that might have seemed good at the time that definitely turned out really harmful to you or others around you, like you do have to learn from it, obviously. I mean, if you don't, I guess that kind of touches back on like the self-awareness thing with Immortal. Like if you make a stupid mistake, you're bound to not make it again unless you don't have that self-awareness.
Absolutely. And in the next scene, we see Mark and Amber flying off to, I believe, Paris together and having a nice little lunch at a cafe. They're having a great time. It seems like their relationship is starting to get the spark back a little bit. There's some chemistry there again. They're not so awkward around each other. They're just having a very nice little date, talking about spring break plans, about how they would go to Hawaii, and it's very nice until a Viltrumite comes down and grabs Amber's neck, and from there on makes some very serious threats that she will kill both Amber and everyone in the cafe if Mark doesn't comply and come talk to her. So they end up working out a deal where if she lets go of Amber's neck and leaves them alone, that Mark will meet her up in the sky. And we find out that this woman is a Viltrumite named Anissa.
I believe in this scene, or maybe it's in like the very next scene, but they're adjacent. This is also where she says, like, I was sent to check, like, as like a progress report to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do, and that we're not going to have a problem like we did with Nolan.
We cut to the control room. What did you call it, Richard? The fluorescent light?
I call it the fluorine room because I think that's in the first season what they call what the chemical was. I don't know, something. The silly room. I don't know.
So we're in the control room, and Donald is doing some calculations. He calculates that Mark has less than an 18% chance of surviving a battle with Anissa, which not great.
That's just surviving too, not winning. Like,
Yeah,
that's not getting out unscathed. Like, that's just
you're getting
he
out
lives.
and you're gonna live. That's it.
So Mark, needless to say, he can't pick a fight with her because he's not going to win. Now, there turns out to, in the next scene, be a pretty big monster that is terrorizing some people. And Mark is like, hey, if you care so much about Earth and making this place better, like you say you do, then you'll help me stop this monster. And so she ends up helping him, but in the end, she still reinforces the fact that Mark needs to subjugate humanity and join the Viltrumite cause. He doesn't have a choice. No matter what happens, she won't be convinced of any other way to be. So that's very unfortunate. I mean, what did you guys think about this?
I was quite worried for Amber here, because with Amber, the show has taken a lot of creative freedom compared to the comics in their story. So I was worried they might just kill her here with Anissa. Um but they didn't. We see Mark get his booty cheeks absolutely clapped to dust by Anissa. She she puts boy in the ground.
Yeah, I think this is where they started using impact frames just to show how much crazier she is.
We see she basically spares Mark though. Like, she could have finished him off, but she leaves him be. Um, and we get Cecil praising Mark because even though Cecil told Mark he could just lie to her and say he would enslave humanity, Mark still said, no, like, fuck you, I'm not gonna do that shit. And Cecil's like, that was ballsy, but I respect it. Like, I know I can trust you now.
And that's good because we get to see them developing a bit more of a professional relationship that isn't so. I mean, I don't know. It seemed like Cecil was keeping Mark around more out of like having the leash on him because he wanted control over him completely. But now it seems he's starting to trust him a bit more on his own.
And then we see after the fight, Mark goes to see Amber and they break up. Amber's like, I'm sorry, I can't deal with this. Your superhero duties need to take precedent over me, of course, but at the same time, like, I have needs, which is fair. I think this version of Amber is much more of an enjoyable character than the one in the comics, in my opinion. For some reason, Reddit losers don't agree with that, but they're Reddit losers for a reason. So yeah, and I think Amber's points were fair here. I think, yeah, it sucks for Mark and it sucks for her too, but I think it's okay for them, or for her, to be a little selfish here. Like, it's unfair. Mark has to deal with all of this, and I think Amber doesn't shouldn't have to either. Like, even though she's not the one going out risking her life, at the same time, like, if she gets more connected to Mark every time he risks his life, that's a burden on her too. So yeah, I think it's fair for her to want to end things before they get too serious.
I agree. Yeah. It's just it seems like a much more mature relationship in the show than in the comics from what I've heard. And yeah, just it seems like a much more uh, understanding like dynamic between the two of them, and a lot more uh yeah, like I said, just a more mature relationship.
Yeah. And then in the last scene of this episode, we see Alan get confronted by Anissa. And by the way, Anissa is, I wouldn't say on the same level as Omni Man, but she is above the like three Viltrumites that confronted Omni Man and Mark. So she's like a fairly powerful Viltrumite in on the scale of Viltrumites. I mean, all Viltrumites are powerful in the Invincible universe, but she's no joke compared to the other Viltrumites. She's a real force to be reckoned with. And we see Alan is verifiably stronger than her. She punches him, he literally takes zero damage. Like he eats that shit to the face and he's like, "Oh, easy."
Yeah, and he kind of like he doesn't even really expect it. He's kind of like bracing for it, and then he's just like, that tickled. Okay."
Yeah, he retaliates and he punches her back and she takes some damage. She immediately draws blood squirt like out of her nose. And Alan's like, "Wait, I have this newfound strength." So we see him. He purposely eats another punch, which also does zero damage again, but he pretends to get knocked out by it to get himself captured, get some internal information on the Viltrumites.
Very smart move by Alan here.
Yeah, and I like that because like it doesn't just show that like he's strong. He's also pretty like smart. He's not just an idiot.
Yeah, I mean, I think Alan is definitely portrayed as goofy, but um he's also like the coalition's most trusted agent. So I think that we definitely have to trust that Alan is not the complete goofball we think he is. He has some serious shit he has to do around the universe all the time.
And I mean, coming up with that plan too, like in a 5 second span of time, is pretty.
Yeah, I mean, well, if they continue with Alan how he is, which is fairly faithful to the comics, we'll see. He's a lot smarter than you think.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm not typically a Seth Rogen fan, but I do like the character of Alan.
I mean, I'm more enjoying Alan for Alan than Seth Rogen. I don't hate Seth Rogen, but I'm not drooling over him being
Yeah.
involved in
Yeah.
the project.
There's only one person that I'm like super happy that they're involved in, and that is Peter Cullen. He is one of my favorite voice actors because I mean he's Optimus, bro.
What about J.K. Simmons as
Okay,
I was
Omni-Man?
gonna say
Come on.
J.K.
J.K.
Simmons is
Simmons was
doing an
fantastic.
amazing. When I was when I was reading the comics, and because I saw season 1 of Invincible before I read the comics, I read it in like all the characters' voices basically in my head,
Yeah,
and the J.K. Simmons voice was so good for Omni. Like it's
yeah.
perfect. Like it's so imposing.
In terms of the character design, like he really does look like the older, like J. Jonah Jameson, which is always J.K. Simmons.
J.K. Simmons is also like almost as ripped as Omni Man in
Yeah,
real
I
life
know.
now.
I've seen that live action Omni Man casting. Let's see it.
He might be a little too old for a live
All
action
right,
casting.
he could be someone else. I don't want to
He
say
could be
names because that.
Conquest.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say names because spoilers, but yeah, he could be fucking
I mean,
Conquest,
I don't think a
dude.
name is a spoiler, but
True,
yeah.
because I guess no one knows what that means except for the readers and me.
I have
I
no
know.
idea what it means.
Good for you. Keep it that way, buddy. Until the season, or we're probably what like 3 seasons away from that.
No, he should be fairly soon after the Invincible War, I think.
So hyped for that though.
Yeah, that's gonna be a great season. We're gonna talk about that a little bit in episode 8.
Yes, we are. Which starts off with Nolan is, he's in like the prison and he destroys a group of these combat robots and like some of the warriors that they've got, and Krieg stops him. And I am gonna be honest, Chase, I do not remember why he stops him. If you could pick up my slack.
Basically, I mean, they're just like, I think they're just trying to like tire Nolan out before his execution because they're just gonna have him like trial by combat someone, but they don't want him to win. I think so. They're like
Yeah.
weakening him just in case.
Right.
But yeah, and then Krieg is like he's General Krieg, so obviously he must be a powerful Viltrumite. We see, he's like he kind of like sons Omni Man. He's like chill out, little bro. Like, um, um,
Yeah.
yeah. He's like you've disgraced us basically, and yeah. Just kind of like he's General Krieg, you know, like he's just like he's obsessed with he's obsessed with serving the Viltrumite Empire. Yeah.
Yeah. I do like him so far. I'm sure he not like him like he's a good guy, but I like he's a good, well written character so far, and I know other stuff, as I'm sure you do too. But like I've seen some stuff I'm excited for later on what happens with him. But for now, we got after this scene, Angstrom Levy, who hasn't been seen since no, I guess he was in like a few snippets of later episodes, I think.
No, we haven't seen him since like the Maulers episode, I think.
Oh, okay. I could have sworn there was like one scene, but I might be.
I think it was like the end card was him getting that suit of that same episode.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we haven't seen him since.
Yeah. So he breaks into Mark and Debbie's house, and he takes Debbie and Oliver hostage, and he is interesting in this episode. He really,
he's really tweaking out.
I know. He forces Debbie to like, bring Oliver into the house, and she calls him, and he's like, he said he would hurt us if you didn't come. And then Mark shows up, and this is when the tweaking really, really starts. He just kind of like starts screaming about like, he starts hurting them, and he's screaming about like, you did this to me, blah 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 blah. And Mark is just like, huh? And he's like, oh, you're that guy. And Angstrom really at that guy thing like loses it, because he's just like, how could you ruin my life, and you don't even know who I am, you don't know my name, like. And of course he also is beefing with Mark because of he's essentially fused with all of the other angstroms that were hooked up to the machine, so like he sees Mark do a lot of bad things to a lot of versions of himself.
And what we learn about Angstrom and Invincible, or Mark, is that in basically every other timeline, Mark joins his father or just becomes like a bad guy. So we kind of see that like Debbie is the reason that Mark is good here, you know? I think we get another like reassurance there that Debbie is that she's her. Like she like
she really is
she's like the goat mother. Like,
yeah. No, Debbie is definitely one of my favorite characters in the Invincible universe, because like she doesn't, it's like Art said in the one episode, like she doesn't have any powers, but she is the stronger one, like in her family. Like she really does put up with so much. And I mean, especially in this scene or these scenes, we get to see her like she kind of stands up to Angstrom and is like, you make it seem like Mark is so much more evil, and like you're attacking the wrong one in general. Like my son hasn't done anything except for cause the accident, even though it was Angstrom's fault. Lamau, I don't know. But then they kind of start fighting across the, for lack of a better word, multiverse.
Angstrom starts throwing Mark into different universes where we get a kind of a goofy scene.
Yeah, he is thrown into an alleyway where two guys in masks and costumes and shit are fighting. When one of them is a copyright safe Doc Ock from Spider-Man, and the other one is, of course, copyright safe Spider-Man. From what I understand in the comics, they did, it wasn't Spider Agent or whatever they called him.
No, in the
Professor
comics it was
Ock,
a proper it was a proper crossover with actual Spider-Man and actual Dr. Octopus.
Yeah, but so they fight for like 10 seconds. It's really just like a cool little crossover ish scene before Mark gets thrust through another portal, and he, I don't know, there were a bunch of different universes. There were talking dinosaurs, and then he gets sent away. We got to see Batman, and Mark's like, so you're telling me that you look like a bat, and that's it? That's the gimmick, or whatever. Like, that was.
He also gets put into the Mad Max universe. Maybe that's why they keep putting the damn
Oh
Furiosa
my god, the
ads on the
Furiosa ads,
show.
bro. No, they have that, and then they also have because it is the same creator as The Walking Dead. So I believe it's implied that the one universe with all the zombies is the Walking Dead
That is the
universe.
walk. Yeah,
It
it's
is?
this. It's the
Okay.
same universe. They have
Yeah.
Invincible comics in The Walking Dead.
Oh yeah, I saw that on TikTok the other day. Amidst all the brain rot. Um,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, and so they keep going through the multiverse, and I mean, they come back. Mark wallops Angstrom with a gun from Fortnite. I will never get over that. Um, and then they go to like this, like the sand universe that Angstrom went into in the first episode, and this is where their final battle uh, unfolds. And yeah, Mark kind of beats the living shit out of Angstrom. I mean, it Angstrom's not defenseless. Like, he's a bit stronger, but he's not strong enough. I mean, the
Yeah, well,
fight.
Angstrom is like wailing on Mark, and he's like, I've gotten implants so that I'm strong enough to kill you." And then Mark retaliates, and he basically accidentally kills Angstrom, and he keeps repeating the line like, "I thought you were stronger, like I didn't mean to." We see Mark is like having a mental breakdown over this because, I mean, rightfully so. He's never killed someone before. Like, he's always tried to keep that code.
And we do get like some parallels between him and the Omni Man fight at the end of season one. Like, when he's wailing on Angstrom on the ground, it's very similar to that scene where Omni Man is making the speech like, well, oh no, it's going to be 17 more years. I don't remember the whole speech because it's been a hot minute, but like, it's the same kind of thing, and I like how they did it because a lot of the frames of that fight look like pretty much the same exact thing, just with Mark and Angstrom, or what's left of Angstrom. It was a very just gruesome show of power, though, and then Mark is left alone in this desert wasteland.
Covered in Angstrom's blood.
Yeah, and it's really brutal, and he's only there for, I don't know. We don't really get a sense of time, but it can't be more than an hour before old older versions of the Guardians, like Eve and Robot, Monster Girl, Bulletproof, they all show up. Shit. Sorry, Chase. Never mind. That's not the next scene. The next scene is actually the Viltrumites beating the shit out of Nolan, and Krieg tells him, from what I remember, like, a Viltrumite needs to be whole in body and mind to be executed. But then he takes Nolan back to his cell, and on the way back to his cell, uh, Nolan gets to walk by Alan the alien, yippee. And Alan uses his telepathy implant to just sort of say, like, hey, do you remember me? And they kind of converse through that telepathic link for a few minutes before going back to their cells fully. And Alan says that he's there to bust Omni Man out.
Yeah, then we get to that scene where a portal opens up to Mark, and the Guardians from the future save him. And just before Mark walks through the portal to get back to his universe at the time he left it, we learn about Eve's feelings for him. The older Eve tells Mark that she needs to tell him about it so he can either accept them or deny them so Eve can move on. Um, so yeah, um, Mark gets back to his mom, sees she's alive, sees Oliver's unharmed. He's happy to see that they're. I mean, I wouldn't say okay, but they're whole.
Debbie in that scene, I think I forgot to mention it earlier, but like Angstrom breaks her arm, and not just like the bone, like the bone
Oh
is out
yeah,
of the skin. It is horrific, and like she kind of just tanks that shit. She's fine. I mean,
Yeah, she's
I wouldn't say
as fine
that,
as you can
but
be. Okay, as fine as you can be. Sorry, my mistake.
no, yeah, she's definitely holding up a lot better than anyone else would with having their arm snapped like that for sure. But yeah,
yeah,
fine would fine wouldn't be the word I would
I
use
was.
here.
It's relative. Okay, she's relatively fine. Sorry.
No, yeah,
yeah.
that's
Maybe
for
relative to
sure.
you, buddy. We see in the next scene, Mark is on the roof of the building, which Debbie's inside of. It's like a government building. And Cecil goes up to him and he's like, this is not the greatest place to escape surveillance, and like, I think he's just trying to make some small talk because he knows Mark is kind of going through it. And Cecil reminds Mark that even though um, he killed, he's not like his father, and that this doesn't make him the bad guy, and it was all out of necessity. If he hadn't killed Angstrom, he would have kept basically torturing him and his family until it went too far. I mean, it already did go too far, obviously,
Yeah.
but until someone lost their life, and then it would have been Angstrom's life over one of Mark's loved ones. And I think Cecil says something, and he's like, at the end of the day, if the good guys have won and the bad guys are dead, then everything's okay, or something like that. And I was like, that's a little crazy, but I mean, he's in this instance, it's probably for the better.
And then we move on to a scene of Rudy and Amanda making up a little bit. You know, Monster Girl really opens up to Rudy and tells him that even though it would be great if there was some sort of fix to her situation and how much she would love if he were able to figure something out, at the same time, most days she does not really want to talk about that. She doesn't want to talk about the fact that there's a problem, and Rudy is really making their whole relationship kind of the fact that this is an issue that he feels he needs to solve. And as much as she does actually appreciate that, it's still just a distraction from what they could actually, like, the relationship that they could actually have. And she knows it's coming from a place of worry, but it doesn't make it any better that that's all he makes their relationship about. Yeah. And we find out in the scene after this that Duplicate, in fact, is alive, and that she had made a copy of herself and always keeps an extra copy of herself around just in case, a little break glass in case of emergency situation. And she had really wanted to disappear off the map, never be seen again. She just felt tired of dying over and over and over again, which is completely understandable. And she decided to come back and see the Immortal because she really loves the Immortal. And obviously, he's just over the moon that Duplicate is still alive, or at least a copy of her is still alive. So that's it was a very touching scene to see them reunited again.
Yeah, for sure. And then next we get this scene that I'm sure is important for later, but it was really just kind of there. It's some researcher and a woman with that has some form of powers. It just looks like basic like super strength. They're going into a mummy's tomb, and it's implied or not even implied. I think the archaeologist just outright says like that her father died in that tomb. So they go in, they open the sarcophagus, which is totally not a no-no from like any treasure movie ever. But hey, what do I know? Um, and so they open it, and this like mummy ghost pops out and starts bitching that there isn't a male host because I guess he says like the curse requires him to inhabit a male host. But then I mean, I'm pretty sure he inhabits one of them anyways and flies off.
Yeah, does he inhabit one of them? I don't.
Or
I
maybe
don't
I don't
remember.
know.
I don't remember the significance of this shit in the comics or in the show. I just remember it being like some weird ass scene that was there, and I was like, "What is happening?"
No, I genuinely forgot about it, and then I'm looking through the outline and I see mummy BS, and I'm like, oh yeah, that.
When I was watching it earlier today, I was like, "Oh, did I accidentally autoplay a different show? Like, what's happening right now?" um, but yeah, and then it does a little transition into Mark flying overhead, and he's pretty pissed off. He's taking out his emotions on the sky, flying around, and Mark is really worried that there's a possibility he's going to become his dad. We see him sitting out on the rooftop at night, and he is trying to gather his thoughts, and his mom comes out to sit with him and is like, "You're not going to go to sleep anytime soon, are you?" And they have a little heart to heart where Mark says that he needs to drop out of college. He needs to really hone his skills, and that's the most important thing he can do. Which at first Debbie tries to push back a little bit, tries to make it seem like, college is still really important, but in the end, she understands where he's coming from and accepts the fact that he really just needs to focus on being a superhero because it's not sustainable for him to be a college student as well. It's not fair to him, and it's not fair to other people who need him.
Yeah. And after this, he's still not necessarily down. Like he's definitely feeling better, but I feel like he really needs to talk to someone else who's got more similar problems in terms of like superheroing. And so he talks to Eve, and of course she, as we just found out, has feelings for him. So of course she is more than happy to help him out, and they just kind of sit on the rooftop together. They have a good heart to heart, and he almost tells her, like mentions what future Eve told him, and then he decides like, no, I'm not going to do that, at least not now. I'm hoping that he does something about it though soon. I mean,
That's going to be messy with Eve and Amber being friends if if those
yeah,
two actually get together. That's going to be pretty messy for sure. But
yeah.
I'm here for it. I'm
I'm here for it. Yeah, the drama,
I'm in
you
for the
know.
ride. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think in the comics, around this time, before this time, Eve was actually William's beard at one point.
Oh
um,
my god.
yeah, that's kind of funny. Yeah. Um.
Okay, that. Sorry, that's just
um.
okay. That I get cool.
That's pretty
Um.
funny actually.
um. The last scene of this season is Alan tele. Holy crap! Alan telepathically contacting Nolan um to seek help from him to join the coalition and Mark against the Viltrumites. But Nolan, he seems set in his fate of death, and we kind of learn more about how he's become more human and the humanity he's gained through his companionship with Debbie, having Mark as a kid, and Thraxons. He talks about his regrets, his remorse, all these new feelings he's having, how he feels so horrible for all that he's done to the humans, especially in Chicago. But yeah, I think we really see him turning a new leaf here.
Yeah, and I think his last, I think the last words in general of this episode are just, yeah, and I don't know. I thought that was a really like well delivered line because like he's like stuttering through it as like he's beginning to realize that that's what's going on. Because I mean, for as old as he is, I mean, we don't really know how old. I don't think at least, but like we know he's not. in his 40s, maybe 50s, like he appears to be, and like having a profound realization like that as late into his life as he is. I mean, I think he's definitely stunned by it, and I just love J.K. Simmons as a voice actor, so of course I'm glazing a little bit.
No, he's a great voice actor. Definitely deserving of the praise. Um, we are running a little bit long, so before we start to wrap things up, I have just a couple. I think actually just one question for you, Chase, about how things compare to the comics. Um, One of the things that I was curious about when I was watching this is, does Debbie accept Oliver as her son as quickly in the comics as she does in the show? Like, is it a pretty immediate thing that happens in the comics too?
Um, I don't remember exactly. I know she does raise him though in the comics as her own, basically. So it's like Debbie is similar in the comics, very similar. I would say, like at the core, they're the same character still. But I mean, in the show, obviously, she gets a lot more spotlight, which is, I mean, I'm happy about that. She's a great character, very enjoyable to watch. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the scenes they changed from these set of episodes was when Mark and Amber are at the cafe in the comics. It's Debbie and Amber, or sorry, Debbie and Mark at the cafe, and Anissa threatens Debbie. But yeah, 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 because Mark and Amber break up earlier in the comics.
Yeah, I think it's good though because it gives a more like realistic, I guess, feel to the breakup because like you can kind of sympathize with Amber instead of not sympathizing with Amber, I
Yeah, I
guess.
mean, I think Amber's points still stand if she's not at the cafe, but I think they definitely hit a little harder. I think I think Amber's character is much better done in the show. I mean, it's easy to say that though because it's been like almost I think almost a decade since the comics finished. So they've had time to work on the story and the characters.
Yeah. Also, I think that if they had had Debbie at the cafe and had her in that danger, and then the very next episode they have her being like threatened by Angstrom, it would have been a lot, a lot of like Debbie in danger.
In what light? She literally was clutch godding versus Angstrom. Are you kidding? She stopped Oliver from getting fucking destroyed. She used the wooden dove to fend off Angstrom. You know, she's the goat. Um, no, I know I'm messing with you. Yeah, no, of course, yeah. But yeah, I think. I mean, I think they've done such a good job. Even though it's not the same as the comics, I feel that everything is landing in a way that makes sense and connects back to the comics in a good way too. Um, I think the main story points are just they've remained the same, and I think that's a good thing. I like the Invincible comics, but I mean all the characters that they've changed so far, it's been for the better. So I'm happy with how they're handling it.
Yeah. Hopefully they keep going with that. I mean, I've been really impressed with all of the Amazon shows, like the major ones at least. Fallout was fantastic. The Boys, Gen V, and Invincible have all been great. And I'm sure there's other shows that are great, but like those are the ones that I've at least seen, and I think that it's just great to get these shows where they really do seem to put a lot of effort into. And also, I love the practical effects in a lot of the live action that they do because they just kind of, I don't know, they do a good job with it. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm just yapping.
Yeah, no, the practical effects always look good in the live action shows. Wasn't there talk of a live action Invincible at some point?
I don't know if I want to see that. In all honesty, I want them to focus on this show. They already struggle to get 8 episodes out a year.
Every 2 years, bud.
Oh yeah, actually every 2
You forgot
years.
about the year in
The
between.
whole other year, yep.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that about covers the episodes. I guess we're just down to our closing bit now, right?
For Invincible, this is going to be our last episode until a new season comes out for Invincible, or if we get another standalone episode like we got with the Adam Eve episode in between, maybe we'll come back to cover that, but that'll all be dependent. So if you want to send us feedback, we would love to still hear your thoughts, even though we're not going to be covering the show for a while. We'll still respond. We would love to hear from you, so feel free to do that. Chase, do you want to tell folks how they can get in touch with us?
Yeah, there's a few ways for you guys to send us feedback. First being email, where you can email us with fallout@thelorehounds.com. We
Oh,
also
actually,
have.
hold on. Correction. It is now radioactive.
Oh,
Oh, good
new
moves.
drip. I
Oh my
see.
New drip,
god.
indeed.
All right. The first way that you guys can contact us is at radioactive@thelorehounds.com. We also have a Discord channel set up for us, the Radioactive Ramblings, within the Lorehounds Discord server, where you can send us a message or chat with each other. And consider giving us a follow on Twitter at Radioactive141. And finally, you can use the contact form or leave us a voicemail by going to thelorehands.com. And please leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people like you find us.
Thank you guys so much for listening. Before we let you go, let me tell you a little bit about our affiliate programming. We are proud affiliates of the Barovian Podcasting Network. And right now, a couple of the other shows in the network. We've got Rings and Rituals, a show hosted by Marilyn Arpukila and Dr. Sarah Brown of Signum University. They're going to be analyzing the Rings of Power Season 1 through the lens of ritual. They look at the bigger Tolkien legendarium, but also look at ritual in our daily lives. They've got shows coming out every other week. They're a great listen, so go check them out. Next, Woolshift Dust, which is covered by Alicia. She is currently looking at Beacon 23 Season 2. She's just had an interview with author Hugh Howey and has got a lot of other great content. In addition to Woolshift Dust, she's also got a new Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast. First 2 episodes, I believe, are out now, and it's a great listen, so give the Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast and Woolshift Dust a listen. Properly Howard Movie Review is a show where two old friends review movies. Anthony is an academic and Steve is a stand-up comic, and they rate movies on a scale of better or worse than a Ron Howard film. It's a very funny concept, so go check them out. Last but certainly not least, our parent podcast, The Lorehounds, just finished up their coverage of Shogun on FX. And they just had some big news with David and John being joined by Alicia from Woolshift Dust as the third full-time Lorehound. So now they are a triarchy. The Lorehounds are 3. And they are currently covering a recap of House of the Dragon in anticipation of the new season. So go check all of those out. And thank you guys so much for listening. We will see you all in the next episode.
A new Star Wars journey begins in the place all good journeys begin. At, well, the beginning. This Star Wars Day, I'm excited to introduce the new Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast, where we will piece together the complete story of that galaxy far, far away, in timeline order, from the dawn of the Jedi through the great unknown following the sequel trilogy. This is a podcast for both Star Wars superfans and complete newbies. Listen to the short intro episode now to hear how it works and what to expect over the coming weeks as we set the stage for the new television series The Acolyte, which we will be covering with weekly breakdowns. Subscribe to the Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast wherever you listen to take part in one of the most epic and expansive stories ever told, following all the twists and turns from start to finish. May the 4th be with you all month and beyond.